Hi, everyone. This is Lin Bouthillier from linbouthillier.com. I'm a certified trauma recovery coach, and I'd like to welcome you to special episode number 160 of my ongoing series entitled Monogamous at 13. This is my story of my trauma, and not just the story of my trauma, but the story of my trauma recovery from well, let me just say the trauma existed from before I was born and to present day. But the greatest majority of the healing of that trauma took place from my late 50s until present day. And I just a couple days ago turned 61 years old. So relatively speaking, my recovery only just started in the past, I would say 4 to 5 years. And it's a remarkable thing. When we begin to heal our trauma, there's a misunderstanding and a misconception, a myth that I would like to clear up right now. It does not take a segment of time equal to the amount of time it took for the trauma to take place in your life, for the different various traumas to build up and bring you to a state of awareness that you don't feel good. It's a really unscientific way of putting it. I don't feel good. I'm traumatized. I'm dealing with the emotional, psychological, biological, neurobiological, and the after effects that are left within me. I'm tired. It's really early morning. It's the morning after Halloween, and I did absolutely nothing Halloween related yesterday. But I just want to make sure I got that right. So we have five after effects of trauma. Okay, we have emotional, relational, psychological, biological, and neurobiological after effects. So when we begin to recognize those and begin to work on healing our trauma, does not take an equally proportionate amount of time. Let's say, for instance, I was traumatized by a group of people in a family system for over 30 years. We are not looking at 30 years of recovery. And I've actually had someone say to me, hey, it took me, the person was in their 60s. And they said, I don't have 60 years left of my life to be able to undo what already happened to me. And I said, well, there are two misconceptions going on here. One is that we undo what happened to us. That's virtually impossible. And the second one is that it does not take an equal amount of time to the amount of time that you experienced relationship trauma or whatever, trauma that happened. But in this case, we were referring to family systems trauma, relationship trauma that went on over the course of 60 years. No, it does not work that way. And I like to put that concept to rest for people so that they don't have to concern themselves with that anymore. We get peace from having clarity on something. Clarity is extremely important, especially in trauma recovery, because when we have clarity on something like that, then we don't have to give our time and attention to it. We can let it go and we can lean into the direction where the truthful information is, which is this. Using that same example, if a person had 60 years of family systems trauma, they can begin to learn the language of trauma recovery. They can begin to focus on self-care, which is a huge part of trauma recovery. And for some things, the trauma recovery can be instantaneous. For other things, it might take weeks to months or even a couple of years to work on. But that's so different than the idea of, well, it took 60 years to get this way, so now it's going to take 60 years to undo it. So that's a myth that I'm very, very happy and excited to dispel for people. But trauma recovery comes through understandings like the one I just gave you. There are lots and lots and lots of them. But trauma comes through new understandings, which means when we understand something new, when our thought process about it is changed, our belief, this person that I'm speaking about had a very strong belief that that that's the way it is. And when we have a really strong belief, the behaviors of a person will coincide with their beliefs. But when we turn the beliefs just a little bit, then that person can become curious and creative about what to do next. And I can't stress to you how much creativity and curiosity are a voluminous part of trauma recovery. Just absolutely huge part of trauma recovery. So I'm going to show you what I have in my hand. Yesterday, I found yet another new holy stone. Here it is. This one was from yesterday. This was found on Halloween afternoon at Lake Erie. Now I'm going to share with you a little bit about Halloween. Right now, in this camera shot, it looks like a little bit like it's Halloween, except for I don't have anything Halloween related in the background view, but that kind of dimly lit room, it's about 8:30 in the morning. And on November 1st, and it's a really dark, dreary, super high wind day. And it's only about maybe 50, like high 50s or 60 degrees outside, but the wind, it feels cooler. But yesterday when I was driving to Lake Erie, the thermometer inside my car was reading 78 degrees. And we were not in the bright, brilliant sun. It was overcast. And it was reading 78 degrees. And I went out to the lake yesterday. Like I've said in the past, it's about a 14-mile ride from my house. It only takes a few minutes to get there. But it is my peaceful place. It is my place where everything that hurts inside of me feels better for a while, because the lake is beautiful. Referring to Lake Erie, the environment is beautiful. The air is phenomenal. The air just coming off the lake, that breeze coming off the lake. I have never gone there and thought, this is no good. I don't want to be here. It always just absolutely thrills my soul. So it's part of my self-care. The fact that there are wonderful little things like this and some beach glass there and some new people to meet and beautiful sights. Like, I don't know what it's called when they have those big, huge inflated kites that are arc shaped. And there's a smallish surfboard and all the rigging and everything that goes on to the individual who's going out in the water. But there were men and women who were going out, and I don't know if it's called kite surfing. I don't know, windsurfing, but such a cliche expression to use, but it's just breathtaking. I mean, the joy that I felt inside watching that. And if there's a shift in wind, then all of it, I mean, just watching them all of a sudden just get lifted right up off the water. And their boards attached to their feet, and they're just being flipped around in the air. And the exhilaration within that person, I was feeling it inside of me just from witnessing it. And I can tell you, when I showed up at the beach yesterday, I was having some heavy feelings. I was having some memories of trauma. And I went there to escape Halloween. I'll explain more of that in a minute. But I went there with a really heavy heart yesterday. And being there for about, I don't know, somewhere around 2.5 hours changed everything. It just changed everything. So, and what I mean is, it changed everything about how I felt. But what I was doing, it was gazing at things that are just too phenomenal to be able to feel awful while you're gazing at them. And then trying to imagine from the shore, if it's exhilarating for me to watch from the shore, what must that person be feeling? The freedom of being lifted up off the earth and off the water, and learning this incredible sport and owning this equipment with which to do this sport. And out there, way out in the lake, it's just you, your kite, your board, and your water. Everything else, it takes such attention from you to be able to do that sport that you would have to let go of every other thing going on in your life. Every traumatic memory you've ever had is completely, I would guess, somewhere down in your pinky toenail at that time. If it has to still be there at all, I think that's where it would be. But I loved watching it. I just absolutely loved it. And here I am, beachcombing, just walking along, giving my dogs a little walk. And the beach is flat. The sand is packed. For somebody with back problems like me, it's a safe walk. And meaning I'm not going to re-injure my spine or give myself one of those muscular injuries that people with back injuries frequently feel, where, oh, I walked on the wrong surface when you get up in the next morning. Oh man, I shouldn't have taken that walk yesterday. I totally twisted my spine and now I feel like I got a kink in it. That sort of thing. There's none of that for me there. It's reliable. I can reliably go there. And it's a place where I go to do my trauma recovery work. And I'm not bringing a list. I'm not bringing a book. I'm not bringing videos to watch. None of that. None of that. It is simply self-care by enjoying the dogs, watching them enjoy all the different things they get to explore. It's about a 1/4 mile beach. When you walk it, the length of it, a couple times, that's a pretty good walk. But I go there because every single thing that my senses can take in that environment thrills me. We need to find a way to do that for ourselves. You might not have anything as dramatically beautiful as the shoreline of Lake Erie where you live. You might not have that, but we can create it. I'm not saying we can create our own lake. No, nothing like that. Please don't misunderstand. We can create our own sanctuary. We can create our own beautiful area. We can create our own thing that we give our attention to that gives us what I call a time slip, which means not dissociation, loss of time. That's not what I'm referring to. I'm referring to when something is so wonderful that it feels like time has gone by in a blink because it's so delicious to look at, to listen to experience, to engage in, to create. A lot of us artists feel that, or when a lot of writers. When I was writing my book, and I still have editing to do before it goes to publishing, but when I was writing my book, the idea flowing, the concepts flowing was so profound that hours would go by. I'd be so immersed in writing what I wanted to express to people. It was highly therapeutic, and time went away when that was happening. That's what I'm referring to when I say time slips. When we are enjoying something so much that the time is something that just kind of goes to the background. And before you know it, hours have passed, or half an hour's gone by when you thought you were only going to be doing this for 5 minutes or whatever. But it's a delicious experience. And if you have not experienced a time slip from simply being joyful, I hope that someday that you will, because it is incredible. Okay, so I've got my grounding stone, my brand new holy stone, which I just absolutely love this one. It couldn't have been more beautiful. I love it when the stone is small and the hole is huge. That just, to me, is like perfection. I'll show you another one so that you understand what I mean. This one, the stone is much bigger and the stone and the hole is smaller, and I have to hold it like this in order to see through to the other side. But this one, you just hold it up and you can look straight through it. So one small thing about the holy stones is I did find out from a lady at the beach a couple visits ago. She told me those are called hagstones. Well, I looked up hagstones, and it turns out that in Ireland and a few other places, hagstones are a really big thing. And then Many different countries have their own name for them. Germany has their own name for them. Certain African countries have their own name for them. There's just lots of different places around the world where they develop, and it's a very natural thing because it's a form of sandstone. They're not precious. They're not uncommon. They're all over the planet, but I still get a thrill when I find some. And so now I've got somewhere, I don't know, around 50 of them. And I never even knew they were called hagstones. And I never knew that they were considered to be a piece of, and I am absolutely irreligious in every way. I do not subscribe to any religion, but they are something that is used in Wicca. And I don't begrudge anyone their religious beliefs. I just simply don't have any anymore. I have spiritual beliefs instead. All right, so today's discussion, if you don't mind me getting into it, is going to be a little bit of a triggering topic, because what are we speaking about? We're speaking about trauma. Whenever we're speaking about trauma, there's going to be some triggering. So we need to have a grounding tool, and I have my little new holy stone in my hand. It feels very nice in my hand. And what does it do? It makes my central nervous system aware that there's a body, that I'm a three-part being, is what it's reminding me of. Some of you say, well, it's my brain being reminded that I have a body, and my body's being reminded that I have a brain. But what does that really mean? It means that we are staying. The trauma recovery coaches that I was trained by for my certification refer to this as we need to learn to stay in the body. When we're staying in the body, that means we're not living in our head. We have to remind ourselves, I'm not my thoughts. I am not my thoughts. I am a triumvirate human being. I'm a body, mind, and spirit. And when I am grounded, that means I have awareness of that. And I have awareness that I am not what I'm speaking about. I am not what happened to me. I'm a completely separate, whole, unbroken, nobody was at my door. It was just something going bump in the morning. It's so windy out. Things are flying out there. And I think something hit our front door. So yeah, there's lots of debris flying around out there. So I was just at the beginning of getting into explaining that we need to be grounded when we do our trauma recovery work, so that we are not just in our head. We are recognizing that I have feelings, and my feelings are in my body, and it's okay for me to recognize those. And when I get feelings that are the things that come after my emotion, I feel an emotion first, and then I get a feeling in the body, and it's lightning fast. Their thought energy and feeling energy are some of the fastest energies in our known universe. But I take care of myself when I recognize that a thought that I had caused a feeling in my body. I don't like that feeling. It causes tightness. It causes constriction. It might cause nausea. I have, we've all had the experience of having feelings that we don't like that are caused by something that someone said or did. And a lot of times we refer to that as being triggered. So we're simply just trying to prevent the triggers so that we can feel safe and we can feel good while we're doing our trauma work. So as I said, today's discussion is triggering, and it is about gaslighting. Now, gaslighting, I know, is some people are just fed up with it. They're like, it's such an overused word. I hate it. I hate the topic of gaslighting. But truthfully, gaslighting is just highly specialized lying. It's lying that is designed for, it is used for the purpose of making you doubt your own reality. And because with some abusive people, it is such a pervasive bugbear, it is just always, always, always going to be part of going near them or speaking to them or having anything to do with them. But not all of us can just go full no contact with person. The only way you can go full no contact with your supervisor at work would be probably to resign. Some of us spent way too much of our time and our energy or our income, invested in getting a degree or certification, or or somewhat in some other way deeply invested in the work that we do. And it might not be so easy to just uproot and go find another position where we can do the same work for the same pay, the same distance from our home. There's a lot of things that go into a decision to go full no contact with a person. And for some of us, we have children with the person who gaslights us. And, I've had multiple different counselors, mental health counselors and domestic violence counselors say this phrase to me in different ways, but it all means the same thing. If you've had children with someone, it's very, very challenging to go completely full no contact with them, because you can never be fully separated from a person who is co-parenting with you. There will be some issues. Now, for me, in my situation, there are complications with that, because we are parents to a person with a severe traumatic brain injury. And right now, our son does not need as much parental involvement from us as he did a few years back, but he does need parental involvement. And then one of the parents has been in severe addiction for decades. And so that means that when certain things, certain responsibilities will need to be taken care of, I will be considered to be the parent who is the safe, reliable parent who can take care of and meet that adult child's needs with them and at times for them. But it's life is messy and life is complex. Trauma can be messy and complex, where there's an understatement, right? But when we have a person who's in our life, and the best that we can do is to go low contact with them, to have as little to do with them as possible. This is a way that we can protect ourselves enough so that we can heal. Many of you are like, Lynn, I'm way past that. You're speaking to me like I've never heard of this stuff before. Well, there are some viewers who are new to this. And so I want to be very, very clear about the fact that there are some times when we will have the desire, an extreme desire to go like to the other side of the planet to get away from someone. There are some people who sadly, this candle right here is lit for people who went non-physical either by their own choice, or they got so sick or injured or other options that they could no longer remain on the planet because their trauma was so severe. When we're being gaslit by somebody, and I'll tell you other common names for being gaslighted, okay? Having someone be the author of our reality. Thank you, Dr. Roberta Shaler, for that one. And a person who negotiates reality. And a person who believes that their reality, imagined or real, is the only reality in our world. So I when I was writing my book, I started an expression that's called Olympic level gaslighting. Okay, that's what I refer to it as, Olympic level gaslighting. And what that means is obviously an extreme, highly adept gaslighting individual. Now, some people will take gaslighting to the point of being used as a tool to alienate other people from you. Now, I want to pause here to give a shout out to, I can't say your name on a video, but there is an individual who is from the southern tier of New York State, lives in the same state that I live in, and is a viewer, and has sent me information about parental alienation, and not just any information, but information from a psychologist expert who has done incredible research and shares the research on the internet. And it's the best information I've ever viewed about parental alienation. And it has really opened my eyes about many different factors that are involved in parental alienation. And I can tell you, and thank you, dear viewer. I really appreciate you. I appreciate you sending me the information. Thank you. We should all be so fortunate to have someone who cares and send us very, very cool information. But one of the things that opened my eyes about is the practitioner does not use the word gaslighting. I haven't heard it. And if it did, it didn't register with my mind. But if the practitioner, the psychologist, if he had used the word gaslighting, I don't recall it. He might have, but I don't think so. But that's a big part of what we're speaking about. I did a video, I think yesterday, posted it yesterday, recorded it 2 days ago, about parental alienation being part of malignant narcissism, and it absolutely is. But the gaslighting that's involved in parental alienation is off the charts. If there was a level that's above Olympic level gaslighting, I guess you would probably call it universal gaslighting. That would be the only word that I can come up with that would be appropriate, right on, just on the fly. But Olympic level gaslighting means every time I'm near that person, it's guaranteed. I know I'm going to be told lies. And they're lies, not just random lies like, hey, guess what? I was an astronaut when I was in 3rd grade. Just stupid, childish garbage like that. That's not what we're talking about. It sounds more like this. Person will say something like, use the word obvious, but instead of a B, OBVIOUS, obvious, they might say obvious and use a D instead of a B. This happened actually to me in 1985 when we were first married. And I said, actually, I remember right where I was. We were in our 4-room tiny apartment in upstate New York. And I loved this apartment. And I was sitting in a chair from the 1960s, that matched our sofa from the 1960s. And I'm sitting in my chair. The chair that I was in was directly facing the television because it was whose chair? His chair. It was his chair. He had to have a chair directly straight on from the television, and I get to view television from the opposite wall. So I can watch TV like this. But he gets the chair where he's straight across, of course, because he's him. He's a highly narcissistic person, and they set up even their housekeeping, everything in their environment is set up for them being the prime person, the more important person, the person who has every convenience. And you're just going to have to go suck eggs. This is the way they look at it. You're just going to have to deal with it. But I'm sitting in his chair, and he's standing in the doorway to the kitchen, which was actually just a couple degrees off from the television. And he's standing in the doorway, and he's speaking to me about something. And he says, well, it's really obvious that blah, blah, blah. And I said, actually, the word is obvious. And because we're adults now, we're 21 years old and we're married. It's going to be really noticeable if we say things. And that might have been being a total a-hole at this point. Many of you are going, oh, why would you do that? But I did it because I was 21 years old and I thought I knew everything. He said obvious, and I said, no, 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 actually, dear, it's obvious, and I don't want people to laugh at you. And what I was thinking is I want people to see us as mature adults and take us seriously. Because all the adults in his family and my family are still referring to us as the kids. The kids are getting married. I wanted to be seen as an adult. And I wanted him to be seen as an adult too. So I said, actually, the word is obvious with a B, not a D. And immediately his demeanor changed. His whole face just went really dark and stern. He goes like this: thank you for correcting me. That was the first time that he had gone that, well, let's just call it dark. That's what it felt like to me, darkness. Where did the person that I love go for a second? Because I've never seen this person before. I have never experienced this cruelty from him before. And that's what he was conveying to me with just the expression, the stare, the dark eyes, the robot talk where you get no voice inflection. Thank you for correcting me. It was just him trying to establish dominance over me and to make me feel like a POS. So I kind of stood my ground and I said, well, on the inside, I was crying for sure. And I said, well, I just didn't want people to, I don't want people to laugh at you or think that you, speak like, ignorantly. I don't want people to think that you speak ignorantly. And he was just absolutely hateful towards me at that moment, because his ego, his narcissism could not take a criticism. I mean, none, zero. But what I said to him was, I thought about it for a second and I said, that hurt my feelings because you have never been that unkind to me so far, as long as I've known you. And immediately his expression changed. He said, what did I do? I didn't even say anything to you. And this went down in my system's history as the first noticeable, obvious, horrendous gaslight from the person that I was married to. I had no idea the expression. You wouldn't know it for decades later, until decades later. But when it happened, what I did recognize is something just happened here, and this person's a liar. Holy crap, something big just happened, and my system feels awful right now because two things happened. First came the cruelty, and second came the lie. Immediately after that didn't happen. I said, you just spoke to me in a tone that you've never used before. Your face went into this sort of blank expression, and your voice conveyed almost hatred for me. And Dr. Shaler, Roberta Shaler, PhD, cleared up what that is. It's referred to as contempt. The highly narcissistic person feels contempt for us when we correct them, if we ever deign to correct them, which they think we should never, ever, ever, under any circumstances, ever do. Why? Because their ego is so fragile. They've got such a thin skin. They cannot stand criticism. That's why they have a false self in the first place. But now, with the understandings that I have about trauma and about narcissistic personality disorder type traits, and antisocial personality disorder type traits, and oppositional defiant disorder type traits, avoidant personality disorder type traits, and about delusional disorder traits and psychosis traits. A person who is doing that right to your face, telling you that what they just said, how their voice sounded, what their facial expressions looked like, how they lashed out at you for daring to give them a piece of information, which was just simply the truth. The word is not obvious. It's not obvious, it's obvious. And since we're married, we're grown-ups, we're 21 years old, we live in our first apartment, it might be a good idea when you say things that if you said it in front of me, I'm not going to harsh on you about it. But if you say, I was worried, if you say it in front of, your peers or people at work or whatever, might not go so great. But what I got instead was a lashing out cruelty that was meant to teach me, I'm going to be so wicked to you if you ever do that to me, that I'm going to make you hate yourself for doing it. And then that'll give me protection, because you will be just afraid of me enough that you will never do it again. That's what the first part was. Part A was the lashing out. I'm teaching your brain and your nervous system and your body to understand that if you correct me ever, which I cannot tolerate, I will hurt you. I will lash out at you swiftly and severely if you do that. And what the feeling that I got in that moment, I'm not kidding. The feeling that I got was, this time I got a verbal reprimand. If I do it again, it could be physical. That's exactly how I felt. I could get something physical next time, because this person means business. But now let's just look for a moment at the gaslight that was part B. Okay. The insult or the cruelty, the lashing out, the verbal abuse, verbal, emotional, psychological abuse is what just happened first. No doubt about it. Okay. That response to just a simple language, correction. I hate that word, but that's essentially what I was doing. I was correcting his language, and there's his response. Thank you for correcting me. All right. So when somebody's doing that, it's verbal, emotional, psychological abuse, and they know it. But here's where the lies come in. Every gaslight is a highly specialized lie. And so when this person tells me, when I said, that was really harsh, it hurt my feelings, and it wasn't necessary. And as I said, it sounded like this. What did I do? I didn't do anything to you. Those two statements always come connected. What did I do? I didn't do anything to you. You must have imagined it, because I didn't do anything to you. There must be something wrong with your mind, Lynn. And some of them might go so far as to say, oh, I know what this is about. This is about how your parents abused you. Or this is about how your siblings abused you. So now you're going to take it out on me that you were abused in childhood by your family, and now I'm the convenient scapegoat. And you're going to say that I just abused you, when it's impossible for me to have abused you, because I'm the creator and definer of reality. And it's virtually impossible for me to do wrong, because my reality states that it's not possible. I mean, this can get really convoluted really quickly. And the whole point of it is to fuck your brain. The entire point of gaslighting is to fuck your brain. There's even there's even a YouTube channel that's called Unfuck Your Brain. And it's about getting yourself healthy again after, I forget the content creator's name, I can't remember. I saw it like maybe a year or two ago. But the whole concept was getting you healthy again through trauma recovery after such severe abuse. Well, okay, now let's look at the person who believes that they are the author of your reality, and that they're the sole person on the planet who was given a cape and a sword and they have the authority to define reality. Nobody else does, just them. So the gaslighting verifies their narcissism. And by default, all people who have high traits of narcissism gaslight people. They all gaslight people. It's just one of the tricks and tools that's inside the sack of tricks and tools that's slung over their back everywhere they go. But they will always, always find their own personal safety in gaslighting you. I've given many examples of how the person that I was married to and in relationship with for 45 years, the ungodly number of ways and incidences in which they gaslit their parents, their sibling, their other relatives, my relatives, me, and even themselves. I'll give you another example, and I think I've used this example before, but it's a little bit gruesome. So if you're squeamish about physical injuries or blood, you might want to not listen to this one. I'm not going to give horrible, ongoing, long, gory descriptions of it, but it will have a brief mention of what's happening. My spouse, at that time, my spouse and I were living together, and he worked second shift, and I had just recently had an accident that ended my career at the hospital, where I loved working. I just absolutely loved emergency room work. I was emergency room technician, and it's a fancy nurse's aide that can do blood draws, chest compressions, critical transports, running to sterile prep, running to the blood bank, things like that, doing rescues in the front circle, that kind of stuff. It was very, very exciting work, and I loved it. One night my husband got home from work, and there was a package that had come for him that day. He had ordered a knife, and he believed that he needed the knife for self-defense, but it's way too big of a knife to ever carry without making a spectacle of yourself, because it would never fit in your pocket. It has to be attached to your belt. And I would say the knife was about this long. And when he unboxed it, he was mixing Xanax and alcohol, and he fumbled the knife when he took it out of the box, and it hit him right in the leg, right next to he had one of his feet out, like between himself and the coffee table. And when he dropped the knife, it cut him right in the leg, but not directly on the shin bone, but he was cut into the muscle on his leg right next to his shin bone. And it was bleeding bad. It was about a 1-inch gash in his leg. And I was trying to get him to understand, do not drink any more alcohol right now. Just sit down and put pressure on this wound. And then when it, if it doesn't let up, I was trying to explain to him, I've seen enough wounds that when I was in the room when the doctor was deciding, or the PA was deciding whether it needed sutures or not, I got to be a fairly decent assessor of whether or not something would need sutures, but it was never up to me. It's never up to the lowest grunt in the emergency room whether somebody gets stitches or not. It's up to the treating physician or the PA. But this individual no doubt in my mind, was heading for the emergency room and needed to get stitches. So I said, you're going to need to begin to get yourself together, because we're going on a car ride and we're going to, excuse me for just a second. I apologize. I always have allergies in the fall. I'm allergic to leaves and leaf mold. Okay, so I'm telling my spouse, we're going to the hospital. You need to start to get yourself together. Whatever you need to bring, let's get your jacket, get your shoes on. We gotta go. And he actually said to me, I'm going to bed and I'm going to just put a bandage on it, but I'm going to put the bandage on really tight. And he had his Birkenstock sandals on. And when he walked through the house, I could hear what had come out of his leg squishing in his sandal. It was starting to coagulate in his shoe. And I said, if you go to bed with that kind of leg wound, you're not going to wake up in the morning, because your blood pressure is going to go so low while you're lying down. You're going to bleed out in your sleep, and you won't know, you won't even have awareness that you died. You have to get to the car, and I'm driving you to the hospital now. You put a Band-Aid on it. I'm not kidding you. Put a Band-Aid on it and I said, it's going to be fine. And I said, I had to actually say, if you go to bed with this wound, you might not wake up tomorrow. I'm not allowing this to happen. If you won't get in the car and go to the hospital with me, I'm going to call 911 and have them take you by ambulance. And so finally, I'm following him around the house. He's saying, no, it's just not bad. This is the gaslighting that I was hearing. You are always looking for the worst case scenario. You want any little thing that happens to somebody to involve a trip to the hospital. You always want an injury to be 10 times worse than it is in reality. Something's wrong with you. Why do you always want somebody to have to go to the hospital if they get a little nick and he said, a speck of blood is shown. Oh, we got to go to the hospital. And he's saying to me, maybe you're addicted to being at work. Did you ever think of that? Maybe this is the problem. You can't go there to work anymore, and you miss your friends, and you miss the excitement and the adrenaline rush of the ER, and you're trying to use a little nick that happened to my leg as an excuse and a reason to go to the hospital. Something's wrong with you. And I'm saying, that's real nice soliloquy and everything, except for we don't have much more time to waste, because your shoe is filling up with your own bodily fluid, and you are not going to have this scab over. You hit and obviously not an artery, because that we know what that looks like when somebody hits an artery, but you hit a major vein, and you're not safe right now, and you need medical attention. So now I'm telling you, here's your choice. Get in the car, sit in the passenger seat, and let me drive, because I'm not being driven by somebody who could faint while they're behind the wheel of a car. And I'm not kidding you. We went out the door. He's got his jacket on, he's got his Birkenstocks on, and we get to the door of the car, the passenger side door of my car, and he says, I am driving. And he's holding the keys. And I said, I'm driving. Either sit in the back seat or sit in the front passenger seat, but get in the car, because I'm driving. And he said, the only way I'm going there is if I drive. So what I'm saying to you right now is, even in a dire emergency, this person's narcissism is so deeply rooted that the only thing that they could focus on was, I have a possibly lethal wound in my leg. I'm not joking. the wound can be only 1 inch long, but if it went deep enough, and it went, you had tissue damage, you've got vascular damage, and you can't get that to close. You just simply can't. There's no amount of pressure that you can do that's going to close it. And so, so, so finally I just said, okay, if the only way to get there is for you to be the driver, then fine. All right, fine. I wish I had not wasted so much time. That now your blood volume has changed. Your volume in your body has changed now. And now I'm getting in the vehicle with somebody who absolutely could faint from low blood pressure. For sure, that could happen. But we get to the front circle. What he tries telling me is we're going to park in the ramp and we're going to walk over. And I said, we are not parking in the ramp. You're going to pull up to the front circle. The valet is going to take the vehicle and park it. We're going in the front door. And as soon as we get out of the vehicle, the valet gets in and takes off with it. And I'm going to jump ahead for just a minute. When we came out of the building, that valet was furious at me. He didn't yell at my spouse. He screamed at me. How dare you expose me? You didn't tell me that there was human blood on the floor of the car. You didn't tell me that. You put me at risk. And I had to stand there and apologize and say, you know what? I did. Oh my God, I did. I was not thinking clearly. I was so distraught over what had happened. I didn't have the presence of mind to think about you. And you're right, I did put you at risk. You don't have to believe me that this person does not have a blood-borne pathogen illness. It's highly unlikely that he would have that, but I work in a hospital and I know you never assume, never assume that a person is not carrying some sort of blood-borne pathogen that could risk your life. That's why blood is a biohazard. But all I could do was apologize, give him a decent gratuity. That's all I could do. And I was so embarrassed. I was so embarrassed that in that whole scenario, the person that I forgot about the safety of the person who was the valet. So when we were inside the hospital and a PA that I worked with for years came in to assess the wound, and I said, he was ready to go to bed. He was insisting that he was going to bed. He was going to just have a Band-Aid on it. And that if it was still bleeding in the morning, that he would consider in the morning coming here to see you. And she just stood there. Her eyes were like this. She's going, no, oh gosh, no. And she said, this needs to be closed up. I'm going to be doing that. And she said, I've got a really big thing going on a couple doors down. But she just told me, pointing to me, you drag that chair over here. And she got a washcloth and some gauze out of the drawer. And she said, you hold pressure. He's not losing any more blood from this. You hold pressure. And that's what I did. And so he heard it straight from the PA. If you had gone to bed, you would have been in grave danger. So what does all this have to do with gaslighting? Can you see how many different situations in this where my spouse was having a complete and total detachment from reality? He wanted to do his usual nightly routine, which is get home from work, mix a dose of Xanax with as much alcohol as he feels like consuming. And at that time, he was still not just drinking beer. Sometimes he would just say, oh, yeah, I think feel like having something else. And he would have a shot or 2 or 3 of bourbon with his beer and would be in blackout stage of his inebriation. He would be what's called browning out, which means coming in and out of blackout phase, or just plain blacked out. And substance abuse, okay, alcohol and Xanax. This person is gaslighting me about that. He was gaslighting me that he could drive. He was gaslighting me that it was safe for me to get in the vehicle with a person who's in that condition. He wasn't having signs of inebriation yet. He had just started to drink and the injury happened. The accident happened. But saying to me, I'm going to bed, it'll be fine. There's no problem. Another gaslight, just a complete and total departure from what's happening right in front of us. Telling me, it is not bleeding. It already stopped. Look, it stopped. And it's just drizzling down his leg. It already stopped, Lynn. Why are you saying that I'm bleeding when I'm not? And he was telling me over and over again that he was no longer bleeding. I'm like, yeah, you are. Guess you are bleeding. Why would a person be gaslighting us on this level? What's the underlying thing that the person is trying to avoid? In this case, the heavy duty Olympic level gaslighting was happening because he didn't like the reality that was happening. He did not like it and he did not want it. So he had a really deep belief that he could talk it away. I'm the person who creates reality. I define reality. Reality has to conform to what I say. It's not, I don't live in a world where something happens and I have to handle the consequences of it somehow, come up with a reasonable solution. What is the safest, most reasonable solution to this consequence that just happened that feels out of control? A healthy person looks at it that way. What is the best, safest response that I can have to this thing that was out of control that happened? A reasonable person, if it had been me unboxing a knife, which would never happen in a million years because I would never, ever, ever purchase that kind of knife in the first place. But if I did, and I was the person sitting there at the coffee table, there wouldn't have been alcohol. Okay, I'm not shaming or blaming people who do consume alcohol. It's just I'm a person who does not. And it's multiple different reasons, but that wouldn't have been a factor. But if I did purchase a knife and I was unboxing it and I fumbled it and it fell and it went into my leg, I would be getting up and saying, I need stitches. I have to go to the hospital. Can you drive me? I'm going to sit in the passenger seat holding pressure on it while you drive. That would have been me having normal, healthy thought processes in the situation. I might be crying. I might be in pain. I might be upset. I might be in shock and not really having much emotional expression at all. I might have reduced talking because of shock or excessive talking because of shock. It can go either way. But what I would have been doing was looking at reality and then finding the most logical, direct response, the appropriate, logical, most direct response to remedy that out of control situation that I could possibly come up with. That would be my course of action. A person who is I don't know if it's some sort of disorder. I can't diagnose anybody, but it sure looked to me. This person is now having an opportunity to display an underlying disorder that may be there already, which is a dissociative disorder. He's dissociating from the reality of what's happening around him. Or it could be a delusional disorder that this person has, where they just have constant delusion that bad things don't happen to them, or if something severe happens, it's not severe. Or if I'm badly injured, it's just a little scratch. It's just a nick. This does not need my attention. And if I just ignore it, it'll go away. I used to have a dog like that. She was a little dachshund, and she was so frightened of snakes that she would just freeze and just stare off into the sky. If there was a garter snake between her paws, she would just go into this freeze mode and look off into a direction and just wait. And she wouldn't move a muscle. She would not move. She looked like a statue. And she's just waiting for that creature who it signaled her nervous system to think there's danger here. I could get harmed by this. I'm going to freeze. I'm going into a freeze state. And then I would just be watching. And then this little garter snake is not poisonous, but if it bit her, there's a high likelihood she would get an infection at the site of that puncture, or two punctures. There would be, yeah, snake bite is nothing to joke around about, but that's a person, that's a dog having an instinctual learned response that's probably encoded in their DNA. From ancient times. If any animal who's a threat to your welfare in your life is that close to you, you just freeze, don't move, and wait for it to leave. Well, when a person is being delusional, that might not be just a response to this is danger and I'm going into a freeze state. Delusion is something completely different, where they're playing with reality, either consciously doing it or unconsciously, or reflexively doing it. And the gaslighting could be part of that, or you could be just dealing with a person who is not having delusions at all. They just absolutely cannot experience something like that without gaslighting anybody else that's present. But it sure sounded to me like it was very focused at me. Our son lived at home with us. I can't remember if he was home at the time. He might have been in bed sleeping, because it was somewhere between 12:30 at night and 1 o'clock in the morning. But when you're with somebody who is telling you that what just happened didn't, and then they take it so far off in this direction of delusion that now the whole reason why we want to go get stitches is because I miss the hospital, or because I miss the adrenaline rush of being in that environment, or I'm having some emotional and psychological after effects of my accident, which ended my career, which means anytime they even get a scratch, I'm going, come on, giddy up, go, let's get to the car. We got to go to the hospital. Trying to convince me that it's my extremism that's the problem here, not the fact that they have a gushing wound in their leg that is in serious need of medical attention. So that's a really good example of Olympic level gaslighting. Okay, that's a really, really good example of it. But now I'm going to step away from that example. He did get stitched, and we were home a few hours later, and the bleeding did continue even after it was stitched. And so that leg looked, 2 days later, it looked like he had fallen down a flight of stairs and got injured really badly with bruising, because all of that subcutaneous, blood had to go somewhere, right? So it just kind of absorbs into that flesh and into the skin, and it's very, very gruesome to look at. But he got better. He had to go back a week later and get his stitches taken out. When a person that we are in relationship with is gaslighting themselves as much as they're gaslighting us, but they can differentiate between, I'm just telling myself that it didn't happen, but I'm telling you that you've got something psychologically wrong with you, because you're not going to just let me drink my drinks, black out, and go to bed. And I'll just say, as an aside, as an old ER gal, I'm going to say, when you have an injury like that, the worst thing you could be doing is drinking alcohol and refusing to go to the hospital. The two worst things you could do. Why would somebody be doing something so self-destructive to their own self? Well, with the delusional disorder or with a psychosis type disorder, part of that would be just the collateral damage, and they might not have conscious awareness. I am doing myself serious harm here. It's either they don't know that they are, or they are aware and they don't care. Either way, it's not a good situation. But gaslighting hurts people. Gaslighting is a weapon in the arsenal of weapons used by an abusive person. Many of us have not drawn the line to connect the dots between gaslighting and significant abuse. Because all gaslighting, you look up different sources, okay, on YouTube and everywhere else, you look up different sources about gaslighting, you get a definition of it's emotional abuse or it's psychological abuse. But I haven't found too many that say that it's verbal, emotional, and psychological abuse. Now, this video has run kind of long, but I'm just going to share with you what I have in an AI overview about gaslighting. And oh, I lost my page. I'll put it in again. I just put in a search for severe gaslighting. Okay, it says gaslighting is a type of psychological manipulation that can be severe and cause emotional damage. See, it does not say it's verbal, emotional, and psychological abuse. It involves someone trying to make you question your own thoughts, memories, and behaviors, and also your beliefs, often to gain power or keep you dependent on them. Some signs of severe gaslighting include, well, I'll get to that in a second, but this is really important. Often to gain power. Now, what my spouse was doing is he wanted to be the person who was in control. He had to maintain power, which means you don't tell me where I'm going. You don't interrupt my happy drinking time. You don't tell me what's wrong with me. I'm the person who tells you. And by the way, I tell you what's wrong with you too, so that you can't ever correct me. I can always correct you and point out your flaws. It's one of their deepest beliefs, is they have the entitlement to do that. But it says they do it often to gain power or to keep you dependent on them. Remember, he couldn't be a passenger to go to the hospital for that injury. That was too much. He needed me to be dependent on him for transportation, not the other way around. No, a person who is highly, highly narcissistic, manipulative, and exploitative does need you to be dependent on them. And they can actually be extremely dependent on you. They absolutely can be. But they want you to believe that you are dependent on them and that you must always be dependent upon them. Makes them feel powerful and in control. So persistent lying. The gaslighter may lie repeatedly and blatantly. Yeah, lots of blatant lies were told that night. It's just a scratch. I'm not even bleeding. Undermining your confidence. The gaslighter may try to make you feel inadequate or criticize your looks, job, or abilities. Remember, I was being told, there's nothing wrong with me. You're using me as the reason that you can go back in the middle of the night to the place where you used to work because you miss everybody and you're not handling it very well, that your career there is over because of your accident. So you're trying to use me as the excuse for you to get to go in there. Hey, just because you miss your coworkers doesn't mean that I have to go to the hospital. Making you question your reality. That's what gaslighting is. It is you being forced to question your reality. Gaslighter may question your version of events or make you feel like you're imagining things. That's exactly what was happening. Trying to be the author of my reality and heavily, repeatedly going around in circles and circles and circles of negotiating reality. And I held my ground. I kept on saying, if you go to bed, you're going to die. Or you could die. Or you could have lifelong lasting impairments that were from not being able to oxygenate your brain and your organs because you didn't have enough blood volume to do it. You could get extremely sick and have permanent lasting impairments because of this. You wouldn't listen. Isolating you. The gaslighter may try to isolate you from friends and family or make you defend them to others. I think that he absolutely did not want me to be able to go near the people that I had very, very wonderful relationships with, work relationships. I think he didn't want to go anywhere near a place where I would be welcomed by people saying, we've missed you. How have you been? I think he couldn't stand the thought of that being part of the equation, because that would mean that the extremely emotionally needy narcissistic person would be feeling jealousy and a little bit unimportant in a moment like that. Just a flash of a moment was just somebody saying, how have you been? We've missed you, would be enough to give a narcissist a narcissistic injury, because they would be on the inside thinking, hey, what about me? Why are you two chatting it up? I'm here because I dropped my knife and hurt my leg. We don't need to talk to her. She's just the person who forced me to come here against my wishes. So gaslighting can be difficult, blaming you. The gaslighter may try to make you feel bad for questioning them or blame you for something you did first. On the way there, what I was hearing was, this is my relaxation time after work. And thanks to you, I'm in a car heading for a hospital where we're going to have to wait for hours. And they're going to do something to me that's going to hurt. And this is your fault. Absolutely, they blame you. It's another gaslight. So far in this story that I've told you, think about the layers upon layers upon layers upon layers upon layers of gaslights that have happened so far. That's what it's like to live with or be involved in a situation with an extreme gaslighter, an Olympic level gaslighter. It's not going to be just one gaslight. It might be hundreds. So gaslighting can be difficult to recognize, and it can be hard to leave an unhealthy relationship. However, there are some things you can do. Recognize the signs. Knowing the signs of gaslighting can help you understand that you're not alone and that it's not your fault. There's an old expression. How can you tell when this person is lying? Well, their lips are moving. That's how. Well, with a gaslighter who gaslights, it's the same thing. If they're prone to gaslighting, that means they are a liar. They are a lying liar who lies. Talk to someone. You can talk to a primary care provider or mental health professional about getting treatment. Surround yourself with supportive people. You can try to surround yourself with people who validate you and your reality. Or journal. You can try writing down what's true as you know it. I'm going to go back to the third last one, where it says talk to someone. You can talk to a primary care provider or mental health provider. I would most definitely speak to a mental health provider. I will tell you my experience. Most recently, in July, I went for my annual physical with my primary physician. They gave me a piece of paper, which was a questionnaire about whether or not I experience domestic violence or intimate partner violence in my life. And my answer was yes. And if you answer yes, they want to know, what forms of abuse are you experiencing? And I wrote down every single one on the list. And the last question was, are you open to having having support and intervention? Support and intervention for what you're experiencing. And I wrote, yes, comma, thank you. And I signed and dated it where I was supposed to sign and date it. When the physician came into the room and was given that piece of paper that I filled out that the nurse gave to me when she took my vitals. She said, while you're waiting for the doctor, please fill this out. When he comes in, give it to him. When he came in the room with his scribe and with his student, I handed him the piece of paper, and he looked at it for a brief moment. And then he didn't say anything about it. And then at the end of the appointment, he said, I noticed that you wrote down that you are experiencing some domestic violence. And I said, yes. And he said, do you see anybody? Do you have anybody who works with you in mental health for that? And I said, yes. And I've been to domestic violence counseling, 3 separate places for 3 separate domestic violence counseling and support groups. And he says, well, it sounds to me like you've got it all covered. Then I'm not going to talk about it with you anymore. And I said, I'm really struggling with it. I will be struggling with this probably for the remainder of my life. And what he said was, well, this isn't really the appropriate place to talk about it. Yesterday, it took me from July until Halloween Day of this year, 2024, to send a letter to that office saying, I am no longer that doctor's patient. I won't be back to your facility again. I'm finding a new doctor who has empathy and compassion for a patient who discloses multiple different forms of abuse, from domestic violence, intimate partner violence, on a questionnaire that you give them, and then say, we won't be chatting about that today. That's for somebody else to deal with. I said it was gross, it was disrespectful, and it made me feel that I am not seen, I am not heard, I am not cared about, and that I'm essentially invisible. And my problem is too uncomfortable to even remotely discuss when it affects everything about my health. So they'll probably receive that letter tomorrow, maybe today. And I don't think they're going to care one iota about it. But I was being gaslighted by my doctor. That's exactly what that was. We're going to ask you this very sensitive question that could be really triggering for you. And then after you answer it and satisfactorily for us, and we look at it and we see that, yes, you do have that issue, we're going to tell you we don't care. But that is the truth of what happened. I was gaslighted by my primary physician. He's no longer my primary physician. I've been going there since around 2010. Yeah, almost 15 years. And that's what happened to end my relationship there. Some of you might say, I wouldn't have ended my relationship over that, with that practice. And you're free to feel that way. That's your choice. We all have autonomy. And my system said, no, thank you. I'm going to find myself a compassionate practitioner who cares about my overall health, not just my physical health. So this has been a good discussion. I hope that the information about gaslighting and Olympic level gaslighting and universal level gaslighting has helped to bring you some clarity about the way you are spoken to. And it might give you a piece of the puzzle about some of your trauma. And when we know that we've been gaslighted, and we do everything we can to just understand what it is, and then make the boundary of, no, I do not let anyone speak to me that way. And if they do it after I've made the boundary clear to them, they still continue, then I'm just going to have to weed the garden and say, nope. This is not healthy for me to come near you, because you're a liar. You're essentially a liar, but you're also a distorter of not just your own reality, but my reality. Anybody who intentionally distorts or renegotiates or manipulates or wants to be the author of my reality, I love myself way too much to ever allow that to continue. If you liked this video, please hit the like button right now. Please hit that button and put comments in the comments section. Share it liberally on whatever platform you want to share it. Anything that you do in that realm, and hitting the notification bell, all of that stuff helps to helps my videos to be seen in the YouTube system, and it also helps the trauma and abuse community. So I have immense appreciation for you. I have immense appreciation for you just for showing up and watching my video. It means the world to me. Thank you so much. If you're interested in working with me as your certified trauma recovery coach, I would be delighted to have a discovery call with you. I do charge a nominal fee for the discovery call, and you can call me anytime to set it up, or you can set it up by email. And my email is lin@linbouthillier.com, and my website is linbouthillier.com. And you can reach me by phone at 716-994-3052. I would be delighted to hear from you. Please remember, self-care is never, ever selfish. It's essential to our well-being, and that you are infinitely worthy of your own trauma recovery. I'll see you in the next one. Be well, everyone. Bye.